The hardest part of spaceflight is supposed to be getting home. A spacecraft falls out of orbit at thousands of miles per hour. Heat builds around the capsule. The atmosphere fights every meter of the descent. Parachutes deploy. The ground rises to meet the crew. If all of that works, the story is usually over. In October of 1976, 2 Soviet cosmonauts aboard Soyuz 23 appeared to have reached that ending. Their mission in orbit had been cut short. Now the descent module was coming home. The capsule survived reentry. The crew survived reentry. The return to Earth succeeded. Everything pointed toward a routine recovery. Then the spacecraft landed, and the danger started over. The descent module came down far from the recovery forces expecting it. Instead of settling onto open land, the capsule splashed into Lake Tengiz, a large body of water in Kazakhstan. Darkness was already closing over the area. Wind pushed across the surface. Ice covered parts of the lake. The spacecraft floated alone in black water. From orbit, Earth had been the destination. Now Earth was the obstacle. The crew could not simply open the hatch and climb out. The capsule was surrounded by freezing water. Leaving the spacecraft could expose them to conditions every bit as dangerous as remaining inside. The image was strange. The mission had reached Earth. Yet the crew were still trapped inside their spacecraft. At first, the explanation seemed obvious. The capsule had landed in the wrong place. Recovery teams were trained for land operations. The spacecraft was in a frozen lake. Rescue would take longer than expected, but the location itself appeared to explain everything. Searchlights swept across the darkness. Helicopters arrived over the lake. The capsule could be seen. The crew had survived. Rescue was now only a matter of reaching them. At least, that was how it looked. But time passed. And the distance between seeing the spacecraft and reaching the spacecraft refused to disappear. The lake introduced limitations that the normal recovery system was never designed to solve. Wind pushed the floating descent module. Darkness reduced visibility. Cold affected equipment and personnel. Every recovery method depended on conditions that no longer existed.
Capsule located.
The capsule remained visible, but visibility was not access.
Confirmed, we have visual on the hatch. Moving in now.
Helicopters could locate the spacecraft. That did not mean they could safely extract the crew. The first solutions began to shrink away. What looked like a delay started to resemble a dependency. Rescue depended on weather. Rescue depended on stability. Rescue depended on reaching a spacecraft that refused to become stationary. The capsule floated.
Securing the final harness now.
The options
Capsule
did
integrity
not.
appears nominal.
Hours after landing, the image had barely changed. The Soyuz module was still there. Dark water surrounded it. Searchlights still crossed the surface.
Target. Visibility is poor.
Rescuers were still fighting the environment.
Stand by. Ground
Yet the
team
meaning of the
reporting heavy
image had
winds.
changed completely. Earlier, the capsule represented homecoming. Now it had become a shelter. The spacecraft had already completed its mission. Its new purpose was simply keeping 2 men alive until somebody could reach them. That was the contradiction at the center of the crisis. The most dangerous part of the mission was no longer spaceflight. It was waiting. The longer the recovery continued, the less convincing the original explanation became.
We are approaching from the north.
A bad landing location should become easier to solve with time. More rescuers arrive. More equipment arrives. More information arrives. Options increase. That was not what happened here. The capsule stayed in the same lake. Yet conditions seemed to grow more restrictive.
Be advised, fog approaching
The
from
environment
west.
kept removing possibilities faster than rescuers could create new ones. The location had not changed. The pressure had. Something no longer fit. If the lake itself were the true problem, progress should have been visible. Instead, the recovery operation remained trapped in the same contradiction. The crew were known. The spacecraft was known.
Recovery 1.
Rescuers
Stabilize
were
your
present.
position. The ice is breaking
Access
up faster
remained
than anticipated.
unavailable.
Do not engage until we confirm
Slowly,
a clear path.
the story revealed its real vulnerability. The crisis was not simply an off-target landing. The crisis was what happened
Maintain
after
position,
that
character
landing.
A.
The spacecraft had
Initiated.
functioned.
Confirm visual
The
contact
descent
with the module.
had functioned.
Deployment successful.
The survival
Proceed to the
systems
capsule. Maintain
had
visual
functioned.
Contact.
The recovery system had encountered conditions it was not prepared to handle.
V8 to control, the capsule is
The
drifting
audience
further
expects
west.
the finish
ice is
line of
unstable
spaceflight to be touchdown.
Understood. We are redirecting
For the people
ground
on the
teams
lake
now.
that night, touchdown was only a transfer point between one survival problem and another.
Ground
The
control,
mission
we
was
have visual
not
on the
waiting for a
capsule.
successful
Proceeding with
landing.
approach.
It had already
Roger
received
that,
one.
Falcon 1. Maintain altitude.
The mission was waiting for recovery to catch up. Eventually, recovery forces adapted. Methods changed. The final workable approach succeeded. After long hours of isolation inside a spacecraft floating in freezing water, the crew were finally extracted.
Beginning ascent.
The hatch opened. The cosmonauts emerged alive. Only then did the mission truly end. It is easy to remember Soyuz
Control, this is
23 as
Recovery
the
1.
spacecraft
We have
that
the
landed in a
harnesses
frozen
attached.
lake.
Requesting tension on the
But
line.
that image alone misses what made the event unusual.
Winch operator.
The
prepare
capsule
cable.
floating in
Cable is
darkness
ready.
was never
Awaiting
just evidence of
command.
a navigation problem.
Capsule stabilization is confirmed. Lower
It was
the hook.
evidence
Hook
of
is
a gap.
secure. Confirming latch.
A gap between
Okay, take
returning to
attention
Earth
slowly.
and reaching safety. At the beginning of the story, the descent module looked like proof that the crew had made it home.
Готовьте кран. Кран готов.
By the end, the same spacecraft meant something
All teams,
entirely
report
different.
status.
It was proof that
Stabilization
landing and
complete. Proceeding
rescue
with the
are
hatch
separate
sequence.
systems.
Confirmed. Standing by
A
for
spacecraft can
extraction.
survive re-entry. A crew can survive re-entry. A mission can survive re-entry.
Как
And still,
самочувствие?
for a
Давайте
time,
поможем.
remain unfinished. Because getting home and surviving the return are not always the same thing.